Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you, March 3rd, 2025. I've got all of your news here in one place for your rush hour ride to work. And what an eclectic episode we have. I'll be discussing the Oscars from last night. Anora sweeps the little film that could. It had a small budget and it won all of the big hardware. I'll share some of the clips, including what Conan O'Brien had to say as host. Also, Adrian Brody was played off the stage after a long speech. I'll share that. And we'll get into some Blake Lively news. Blake Lively drops her subpoena. Now, what does this actually mean? I'll share a few theories as to why. And with regards to the harassment claims that she made against Baldoni, we've got resurfaced clips of Ryan Reynolds telling on himself when he made eye contact with a breastfeeding mother. So I'll share all of that, and then we're going to get into the Ukrainian news, which is J.D. Vance having a rough weekend on the slopes in Vermont. Did he trigger a possible World War III? I'm going to break this all down for you in an extremely broad way. No biases here. I know you might, we've all got biases, but I'm going to try my best. I think you'll be interested to what we have to say. All right, I got all those stories and more. It's all happening right now on The Rush. Okay, we'll save all the serious stuff for the end of the episode. We're going to warm you up on a Monday morning. Did you watch the Oscars last night? The movie Anora led with 5 wins. Best Editing, Best Actress, Best Picture, Best Writing for Script, and Best Directing. I mean, absolutely knocked it out of the park. It was the film with the smallest budget out of all of the Dune movies and Wicked and all these other great films. Anora took it home, and this should be just a lesson to everyone out there that if you have a strong idea, a bold, creative choice, run with it. This director, I mean, they made this movie all on location in Brighton Beach in Brooklyn, and the acting, it was fantastic. I watched it on Saturday. I had no idea what I was getting into. It's a movie about a sex worker who marries the son of a Russian oligarch, and it's a wild original story. So I'm sure there's going to be a bidding war for it on streamers now, but it was very interesting. Here's Mikey Madison, just plucked out of obscurity, wins Best Actress, and here's the part of her speech where she actually thanks the sex workers.
Thank you, Brighton Beach, for lending us your beautiful backdrop and incredible community. Also, thank you to Kennedy Schneider. Thank you to our incredible consultants. I also just want to again recognize and honor the sex worker community. I will continue to support and be an ally. All of the incredible people, the women that I've had the privilege of meeting from that community has been one of the highlights of this entire incredible experience.
And she was so sincere, had her speech written on a note, probably had no idea she was going to win. And what a night to celebrate for that cast and crew. Just unbelievable stuff. In other Oscar news, Michelle Trachtenberg was snubbed from the Oscars in memoriam days after her death. Now, she was more of a TV star from Gossip Girl and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but she was in movies. So, I don't know if these things happen on purpose or what, but, she might be in next year's, they have a turnaround. They have to produce these things. So, yeah, obviously they did a big thing for Gene Hackman, but interesting stuff. Here's Conan O'Brien, knocked it out of the park. Absolutely knocked it out of the park as a host. He is probably the main sort of comedic, I don't want to say inspiration, but guy I look up to, just, watching his late night show as a teen. The guy's just an original cat. There's nobody like him. Here he is bringing up a controversial topic.
We're halfway through the show, which means it's time for Kendrick Lamar to come out and call Drake a pedophile. Don't worry, I'm lawyered up. Anyway.
So there it is. We had that moment, and then another moment was actually interesting. After Anora won all the hardware, they were doing well. Here's what Conan O'Brien had to say about that.
Welcome back to the 97th Long Form Content Awards. Anora is having a good night. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great news. 2 wins already. I guess Americans are excited to see somebody finally stand up to a powerful Russian.
All right, and we'll have more on that towards the end of the episode. Let's jump over to Adrian Brody. Now, to be quite honest, I didn't watch his movie. I'm still working my way through the screeners. You know, they give you all of these movies to watch, and you got a kid, and I haven't watched it yet. So this has nothing to do with the contents of the movie, and really nothing to do with him, other than it's a 7-minute long speech. So Mikey's speech was only 2 minutes long when she won Best Actress. His speech was 7 minutes long. Here's the part of the speech where they start playing the music to get him to like leave the stage, and he kind of scolds the composer. Have a listen to this.
To be up here as well. And I'm wrapping up. Please, I'm wrapping up. I will wrap up. Please turn the music off. I've done this before. Thank you. Done this before. It's not my first rodeo, but I will be brief. I will not be egregious, I promise.
When someone says I will be brief, they won't. He goes on for 2 more minutes. Yikes, they start playing the music again. I feel bad for the orchestra. They're just doing their job. But on the way, a lot of people were looking at that moment like, yikes. It was kind of just like very scoldy. And to be quite honest, it just wasn't a great speech. There was aspects of it that were good, but it was just very wordy. He was like, I respect all of the people that gave me. It's like, okay, shut up. You know, like, look, I love that you have a chance to give it your all in these speeches and all, but come on, 7 minutes long. It's a long time, you know? All right. So, here's an interesting other part that we had from the Oscars. And, you know, the Rush Hour podcast, I want to bring to you guys water cooler moments, very important things. Well, here was a movie called No Other Land. I haven't watched it, but it's a film made by a Palestinian-Israeli collective showing the destruction of the occupied West Bank's Masafer Yatta by Israeli soldiers in the alliance which develops between the Palestinian activist Basil and Israeli journalist Yuval. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. I want to do it justice. You know, it's obviously a terrible thing that has happened in the conflict that has gone on for way too long. Obviously, that accounts for all of the senseless destruction from the terrorist state and then also from the response to that. And no matter what I say about this, I get angry people in my emails sending me just brutal updates, and I understand that. But this is a cultural moment happening last night at the Oscars, so have a listen to this.
As we call on the world to take serious actions to stop the injustice and to stop the ethnic cleansing of Palestinian people.
We made this film, Palestinians and Israelis, because together our voices are stronger. We see each other. The atrocious destruction of Gaza and its people, which must end. The Israeli hostages brutally taken in the crime of October 7th, which must be freed. When I look at Bassel, I see my brother, but we are unequal. We live in a regime where I am free under civilian law, and Bassel is under military laws that destroy his life and he cannot control. There is a different path, a political solution without ethnic supremacy, with national rights for both of our people. And I have to say, as I am here, the foreign policy in this country is helping to block this path. And, you know, why? Can't you see that we are intertwined? That my people can be truly safe if Bassel's people are truly free and safe? There is another way. It's not too late for life, for the living. There is no other way. Thank you.
Those are the winners. Those are the winners of last night's of the Oscar for No Other Land. So pretty powerful, wild stuff there. Let's do this. Let's reset the deck. We're going to take a quick break for our sponsors, and we're going to come back with Blake Lively Talk. That next. All right, we have a couple wild stories here in the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni world. There'll actually be a lot to cover this week. I've already got my tabs lined up. But here's Elrich, one of our favorite TikTok creators that's bringing justice to light. And she's sharing an unearthed video of Ryan Reynolds talking about making eye contact with a woman who is breastfeeding. Now, this story is odd at best, but creepy at worst. Although when you take into account the fact that one of Blake Lively's claims is that the boys at Wayfair, Justin Baldoni and his partners, were checking her out while she was breastfeeding, you realize that they're kind of recycling storylines here. So here is the TikTok Elsrich shared of Ryan Reynolds sharing this, I guess, supposed to be funny story, checking out a lady breastfeeding.
I'd probably like to go back to this morning. In the hotel lobby, a nursing mother caught me staring, and I didn't know what the appropriate facial expression was for that. So I just kept on staring and staring and staring, and then I just kind of got locked into that like a time warp. And
that video is a response to a question a fan had asked Ryan Reynolds, asking, if you had a time machine, which historical event would you like to go back in time to witness? Members of the jury, I want to bring your attention to page 25 of 168 of the timeline of relevant events. Present in the room are Lively's nanny, makeup artist, and assistant, while Lively is having body makeup removed. She was not topless, as she claimed in her complaint. She was either nursing or pumping while fully clothed. Lively asked Heath to face the wall while they determined a time to meet with the other producers, who were standing just outside the door. Weeks later, on June 1st, 2023, Lively accuses Heath of making eye contact with her while she had asked him to face the wall.
So there it is. I mean, and again, one wrong thing doesn't make the other wrong. And it's not wrong to make eye contact with someone if they're breastfeeding. It's just I don't know what it is, but it's very interesting that Ryan Reynolds would sort of tell on himself in a moment of like trying to be funny and explain an embarrassing story when Blake would later accuse Justin of that. All right. So then we have Chris without a crystal ball on Instagram, one of our favorite content creators, also covering this topic. We had a lot to chat about over the weekend, and they've posted this update, which is Blake Lively withdraws subpoena for Wayfair employees after judge quashes her fishing expedition. Now, why is this interesting? Well, they went out of their way to try to get a subpoena, and now they don't want it. Why would they want to do that? Well, in their attempt to get this subpoena, or at least the initial attempt, when Justin Baldoni's side said, no, you can't do that. This is way too broad and invasive. They said, well, what do you have to hide? You got 5 mistresses over there? They were kind of planting these seeds, throwing daggers. And I guess now they're just going to not ask for these subpoenas. Here's what Without a Crystal Ball had to say. Blake Lively's attorneys are admitting defeat after Judge Joseph Lehman quashed her attempts at a fishing expedition by obtaining private phone and text message records of Wayfair Studios parties and Justin Baldoni. The judge quashed the motion and scolded Lively for invading the privacy of the targets of her subpoena. Additionally, the judge noted that Lively had no legal right to obtain information prior to August 2024 due to her complaint allegations. The judge also noted that Lively cannot use the subpoenas to try to figure out when parties of the lawsuit knew about the allegations she made against Justin Baldoni because there is no relevant claim in her lawsuit regarding this matter. Wayfair Studios quickly moved to ask the judge to extend the quash to their employees. Lively's attorneys filed a response withdrawing their subpoenas of the Wayfair employees. So maybe it was that Blake Lively's side didn't want to take another loss, so they were like, you can't fire me, I quit type of deal. But we'll have to see what this means moving forward. The chest puffing by the disgraced legal team proves to be embarrassing. A federal judge agreed with Baldoni and Wayfair that Lively was abusing the subpoena process to obtain information that she has no legal right to have. Late yesterday, 2 non-parties that have also been subpoenaed requested that their subpoenas be quashed. Lively's team has not yet responded. So great work there by Without a Crystal Ball, getting this to her audience. Yeah, lots of stuff over the weekend. I mean, geez. Hello, we covered the joke that was made on SNL by Colin Jost, and we've got more content coming out where it looks like maybe this is part of Blake Lively's PR spin, is that her crisis management team might be coming after content creators. I'm going to discuss this more in the next video, but our good pal Shirsty says that her Wikipedia page has been altered. And what does that mean? Am I next? What's going on here? And we did see that there are some articles being written as we speak as to how tenacious and smeary they are. Yet to be seen, but I've got nothing to apologize for. We are providing you the news and the slant that we see, I should say the direction we see that it's going, right? We see a direction where Blake Lively may be grasping for straws, could be a very dangerous place to be in if that's what's happening. So there's all of your updates there. And we have a ton of stuff to get to with regards to what's going on in our world. Not just our country, but our world. Trump and Zelensky had a hostile meeting on Friday afternoon that changes the course of history. It truly does. I don't even mean that with hyperbole. So we'll be discussing it, but first I wanted to respond to this message I got from somebody. I do like feedback. Someone said, Dave, I think you should revisit your assumptions that Russia is an aggressor and Ukraine a victim. Which, by the way, well, let's continue. It's very simplistic and makes to think the whole thing started 3 years ago. The aggressor is the European Union and U.S. Well, I think it's, and NATO, but I get what you're saying. Who funded the 2014 Ukraine coup to bring in NATO? Again, the 1991 agreement not to expand NATO eastward for German unification. No 1 inch to the east, they said. Russia being the bad guy is a Western propaganda that you must at least reconsider. Now, of course, Russia is the bad guy here. That's an opinion I hold, but a lot of historians do too. Putin doesn't hold elections. He's a dictator. He throws people off balconies and poisons them, right? We know this for a fact. Journalists in Russia that have spoken out against him, opposition parties, have been brutally murdered. That's a fact. That is what's happened. I will... what I'm about to do right now is walk you through multiple Republican members of Congress, people that have run for president, ambassadors to Russia, former governors, all saying the same exact thing. When the F did we become pals with Russia? They are the enemy. Now look, you're right. NATO shouldn't have moved further east up to Russia's doorstep. Sure. And again, it's not. Ukraine's not a part of NATO. Do they want to be? Yes. And we're going to explain why after we kind of got them to take away their nuclear weapons, that they now feel like they can't defend themselves, even though they are Europe's largest army. So they've done a hell of a good job the last couple of years defending themselves from an invasion. I'm not going to live in a world where we pretend like Russia was, Ukraine was asking for it here. Yes, there were escalations. Russia crossed the line, sent their boys, these kids, their teens, their boys, into Ukraine, not even understanding what they were doing. Initially, they thought they were there for a training exercise. And what would we have? Hundreds of thousands have either been killed or injured in a senseless war. Why couldn't Russia just exist in Russia? Why does it need to reclaim all of its motherland, the USSR? Wasn't it perfectly happy? Things were fine. So I'm going to break all of this down for you next. All right, I have a hell of a lot of clips to share, but as they say on YouTube and podcasting, show don't tell. So don't take it from me. I'm no expert in all of this, but what we witnessed Friday, like I said before, it changes the course of history. It really does. Here is the moment where J.D. Vance accuses Zelensky of campaigning for Harris, which pretty much gives away why they were so upset. A lot of people are wondering if Zelensky was sort of bamboozled from the beginning, if this was what Trump and J.D. Vance wanted to happen, which is a fight with Zelensky, and then they can have a reason why they're going to say, you know what, we don't need to support you anymore.
No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you. You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country. Have you said thank you?
So he says, have you said thank you once, J.D. Vance? Now, J.D. Vance is the vice president. Why he's even talking in this situation is beyond me. So then Trump gets into it with Zelensky and says, you're starting a World War III. Zelensky kind of provokes them by saying, listen, I know you're separated by an ocean, but trust me, once they come for us, they're coming for you too. You should be afraid. And then Trump says, don't tell us to be afraid. It was messy. Guys, it was a moment in history happened on Friday. And I don't want to share, if you haven't already, go check out the full conversation and listen for yourself. Now, a lot of people aren't going to share sides. They're saying, they might not switch sides and they'll say, well, Zelensky's been getting billions from the U.S. and therefore X, Y, and Z. But what we forget is if Russia takes over Ukraine, then they come for Poland. Poland's a member of the United Nations, which we're still a part of, which means we are in World War III if that happens, folks. So the fact that the U.S. has been able to send weapons over to Ukraine so that they can fight their own battles, their own war, and not one American soldier has died in the process, sure, is it expensive? Yes. But that money doesn't go to Ukraine. It goes to the weapons manufacturers and defense contractors in the United States who make the equipment so that we give them our hand-me-downs. That's what's happening. So this thing goes so far off the rails. And the biggest issue I have is with all of the spineless politicians that change their opinions. Here is then Senator Marco Rubio giving context into how we got into this war in the first place. This war being where Ukraine was invaded by Russia.
The Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s. Ukraine was left with the world's third largest stockpile of tactical nuclear weapons and strategic nuclear weapons on the planet. But they signed this agreement with the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia, that basically said, if you give up your nuclear weapons, we, these three countries that signed to this, will provide for your defense and assure you of your defense. And so Ukraine did that. They gave up these weapons. Well, now, this was signed in 1994, 20 years later, one of the three countries that signed that agreement hasn't just not provided for their defense, they actually invaded them. And I want to make a point on this for a second. Think about if you're one of these other countries around the world right now that feels threatened by your neighbors. And the United States and the rest of the world are going to you and saying, listen, don't develop nuclear weapons. Don't develop nuclear weapons, South Korea. Don't develop nuclear weapons, Japan. Don't develop nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia. We will protect you. We will watch out for you. What kind of lesson do you think this instance sends to them? I think the message this is sending to many nations around the world is, perhaps we can no longer count on the security promises made by the free world. Perhaps we need to start looking out for ourselves. And that's why the Ukrainian situation is so much more important than simply what's happening in Europe. This has implications around the world. Soviet Union.
So now Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State, under Trump's presidency, completely shifts focus from that. And now, they want, a deal to get done. Well, how do you get a deal done with a country that invaded another sovereign nation? There is no deal to be done. They are not going to stop. And Ukraine knows that. So odd moments here when, it's a circus. This is on C-SPAN, but this is a moment where a reporter who isn't normally in the room, I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, asks Zelensky why he doesn't wear a suit. They're mocking him. This is the United States of America.
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if you...
Meanwhile, on the couch, we have J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. J.D. Vance is smirking there, which, by the way, reminds me of when he was in church, when when the minister or priest, the pastor, was kind of saying, like, let's have compassion for illegal immigrants, right? He has this smirk, this shit-eating grin on his face, like he's orchestrating this whole thing. And you know what? J.D. Vance might be. He might have been the one who orchestrated this blowback that, really is changing the course of history.
Own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting...
I don't have such... I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
So the reporter says a lot of Americans have a problem with you not wearing a suit. And he says, I will wear a costume once this war has finished. By the way, Zelensky's talking in his third language. He speaks Ukrainian, Russian, and English, but he can barely speak English. He holds his own. He's learned it throughout this war, probably knowing that he needs to learn a little bit of English so that he can speak to everyone. But, they're sitting on the couch saying, you're not thanking people. Meanwhile, he's spoken in front of Congress thanking them. And Trump says, he's only got a 4%, he's got a 4% approval rating, when his approval rating is actually higher than Trump's is. Zelensky's approval rating is in the, I think, mid-50s, which probably has gone up since this happened on Friday. So here's Nikki Haley. Now, she was shat on by Trump, kind of kicked out of his community, and she still endorsed him, even though he was, sent personal insults to her. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand this world we live in right now, where rather than support good American policies and unifying behind a common goal, which is to help somebody who's been, invaded, we've just changed course. Here's what she said when she was running for president about the complicated situation happening in Ukraine.
The reason we care about Ukraine, and I'll be the first one to say, I don't think we should give any country, friend or foe, cash, because you can't follow it and you can't hold it accountable. I don't think we need to put troops on the ground in Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't want them because they want to be able to win it themselves. But what I saw at the United Nations, terrorists, thugs, and dictators always tell us what they're going to do. They're amazingly transparent. Hamas said they were going to go into Israel. They did. China said they were going to take Hong Kong. It happened. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched it. China said Taiwan is next. We better believe it. Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war. But to avoid going to war, you have to prevent it. And just to support Ukraine, it only costs 3.5% of our defense budget. That's it. The Europeans have paid more, and they should. It's in their neighborhood. But this is about preventing war. And
it's true. The Europeans have paid more. Trump says we've paid $300 billion. The number's somewhere in the hundreds, 150, 190, 140, whatever the hell it is. But the point is that Russia, they talk about having these supersonic missiles that can carry a nuke. And here we are just letting them, I guess, negotiate some deal where they take over, 20, 30, 40% of Ukraine. And then what happens in 5 years when they grow their, so it's just, and again, I say this because I'm going to have people going, Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. You're biased. You're super liberal. Well, these are fucking Republicans, some of the highest ranking, the UN, the ambassador to the UN, telling us exactly what's going on. Now here's Senator Lindsey Graham. Within 2 weeks, his backbone and his spine completely evaporated because within 2 weeks he went from a pro-Zelensky to an anti-Zelensky, all because I'm guessing the people at top, whether that be J.D. Vance or Trump or Elon Musk, I don't know who at this point, have said we are no longer supporting Ukraine.
I want to tell you and your people, you're the ally I've been hoping for all my life.
So for those in the audio, he's talking to Zelensky. This is on Valentine's Day, February 14th.
Not one American has died defending Ukraine. You've taken our weapons and you've kicked their ass. And I'm very proud to have you as our ally. So, what do I think?
And this is 2 weeks later.
Complete, utter disaster. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful. And I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
I mean, it's crazy, folks. It's crazy. It's like I watched it with my own two eyes. I watched it probably 15 times. Zelensky is fighting for the survival of his people. He wasn't expected to last 3 days. They thought the Russian troops were going to roll in there. And what we learned is that Russia is not as strong as we once thought they were. But we can't give up now. You're like you said 2 weeks ago. We literally haven't lost one person, one troop, one man or woman of our military in this conflict, whereas Russia has had their economy beat up. Sadly, have lost 100,000 soldiers, or give or take, who knows the actual number. And I mean, this guy is just a bad guy. I can't even believe this is a conversation. In fact, so many historians are shocked at what's going on. Now we have in the Oval Office, where the Associated Press has been banned and other reporters have been banned, a Russian state media reporter gained entry and watched the beatdown. So what do you think they're sharing in Russia right now when you've got our president and vice president pointing fingers, at one point actually pushing Zelensky? What do you think is being said in Russia right now? Now, here's a comment I found interesting. The world just changed in that Oval Office meeting. What happened wasn't just a disgrace, it was a defining moment in history, one that will be looked back on as the moment the U.S. officially stepped off the cliff into authoritarian collapse and global war. I tell you this all the time. I'm not a fearmonger. This is what historians are saying, that this is a history. I mean, literally, go on YouTube. If you want to talk politics, there's videos that were made before Friday and videos that were made after. And there's nothing that is the same after this happened.
That Russian state-controlled media, for some reason, was in the Oval Office today when this scene happened with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, to be clear, the Trump White House will not allow the Associated Press or Reuters into the Oval Office to cover White House events anymore, but somehow TASS media, Kremlin-controlled Russian state media, somehow made their way into the Oval Office for this berating of the Ukrainian president today, and Russian state media was in the Oval Office somehow live streaming from the event.
And so let's just jump ahead to this YouTube video here where we have Republican former governor, ran for president, Kasich. And here's what he had to say about the history here and how this is just so shocking to so many that we have flipped sides.
It's just not conceivable to me. I served on the Armed Services Committee. Most people kind of remember me from the Budget Committee, but I was on the Armed Services Committee in Washington for 18 years. And there was one thing that was consistent. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you argued about kind of the military activities that needed to take place, the weapons we needed to buy, but there was always one fundamental agreement, that the Russians were our enemy. And they asked Ronald Reagan when he was running for president, how do you feel about the Soviet Union? He said, we win, they lose. I mean, the idea that we are changing this is very concerning to me. Europe, interestingly enough, they now view this as an existential threat. Now, should they have bellied up to the bar years earlier and carried more of the burden? Absolutely. But now I think what they're saying, and I hope they'll follow through on this, is that now is the time for them to jointly come together. Because remember, they live close to the bear. We live on the other side of the ocean. That's one of the things that Zelensky was trying to say. But you know what? The ocean didn't save us from 9/11. The ocean isn't going to save us from certain threats if we're not on top of things, cyber threats. But at the same time,
and in today's world, you just can't, let things like this happen to your allies, because what happens when we need the help, So anyhow, J.D. Vance went skiing over the weekend, and he was nearly taken out on his skis, but the people protested. Here's a clip on TMZ of someone calling him Putin's puppet.
J.D., how does it feel being Putin's puppet?
So there it is. How does it feel to be Putin's puppet? And I guess he had to leave his hotel because he was getting harassed by so many people. Here is Vermont welcoming Vice President J.D. Vance for a weekend of skiing. So he's been in office for 4 weeks now? 5 weeks? How long's it been? So he's a well-deserved vacation to Vermont. Again, I can't even imagine, how we got to where we are. I really couldn't. Here's a Yale historian explaining how dumb what happened Friday was for foreign relations.
The United States is doing is trading a set of Western alliances for an alliance with Russia. Now, the main way as Russia engages with us is by stealing our technology and by hacking into our infrastructure. The Russian economy is smaller than Canada's, but we are nevertheless going to trade 80 years of alliance with reliable partners that are 15, 16, 17 times bigger than Russia as an economy for an alliance with Russia.
And this is what's going on, right? And now look, if you want to give Trump credit why he wanted a deal between Russia and Ukraine to happen, it's because he wants to do business with Russia. It'll help the economy. Maybe there's cheaper oil, gas you can get to, who knows? But in the end, it's so delicate. You can see the collateral damage that is being done. Like I keep saying, we are no longer in the group chat, folks. We are no longer in the group chat. There is a global Western country group chat, and then there's one without the U.S. that involves Mexico, Canada. Now, because the tariffs are going to be starting here, and we have the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing $100 billion in retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. He announced this on Saturday. So it's happening, folks. It's absolutely happening. Zelensky was asked right after his meeting on Friday. He went on Brett Baier, which is also odd that you got to, after you meet with Trump, you got to go meet with Brett Baier. You know, of course, he's on Fox News. And he was asked if he thought that the confrontation with Trump was
Do you think
if the confrontation with Trump was pre-planned?
I think the confrontation in the Oval Office today was pre-planned, like Senator Murphy suggests?
I don't know.
You don't know? You think maybe?
I don't know. No. I don't. I mean, I don't know about it. I think no. I think it was just a really tough situation because we've been very open, very direct.
What set you off? What made you mad?
And then for Brett Baier to frame it, what made him mad? That's you know, like, gosh, could you imagine? Could you imagine he's here in his third language that he speaks, fighting for his country, trying to continue to get support as they try to stay a free nation?
Because they said your tenor and tone set that.
It's not about mad. It's not, Brad. You see, how to say, when you are in the United States, and for example, president or vice president or somebody or senators, it doesn't matter, big politicians, yes, when they, for example, say that Ukraine is almost destroyed, that our soldiers run away, that they are not heroes, that Ukraine lost millions of civilians, that his president is dictator, you know? What is the reaction? It's not about me. The reaction is that where is our friendship between Ukraine and the United States? That's it. This is filling.
Where is the friendship? Where is it? You're calling me a dictator, you know, you're saying we're going to run away, all these things. I mean, it's crazy. Well, as we're finding out, now that we're not in that group chat, the rest of Europe is essentially coming together, ramping up. I mean, there's talks with different countries, soft talks about getting their nuke programs back because they realize everyone kind of has to fend for themselves. The UK is sending boots on the ground and planes in the air to help Ukraine.
Unfair that Ukraine will help shape, that's backed by strength, to stop Putin coming back for more. I'm working closely with other European leaders on this, and I'm clear that the UK is ready to put boots on the ground and planes in the air to support a deal.
And you know what's wild is like, yeah, no, maybe they should have been helping more, but the European countries have spent more than the U.S. on this war. As Macron, the president of France, corrected Trump to say, you know, we're not getting our money back there. We're helping out because everyone's self-serving. It keeps peace. So here's let's go to this one here. This is, gosh, I mean, this isn't even in English, but this is so cryptic. Give Putin a 24-hour ultimatum. Stop bombing Ukrainian cities, otherwise Germany will send Taurus missiles to Ukraine with no range limits. Folks, they are ready to go. Now, you might say, well, but again, this is the U.S. playing 3D chess because this is the U.S. saying, hey, we're not going to fight this on our own. But, you know, these are the types of conversations that you need to have in a unified coalition, not spill out during a bad public press conference. This is I guess we'll end on this. Speaker Mike Johnson on NBC says he thinks President Zelensky may need to resign to get a peace deal. Either he needs to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude, or someone else needs to lead the country. It's up to the Ukrainians to figure that out. Now, former ambassador to Russia, what did he have to say? Michael McFaul, our speaker is calling for regime change in Ukraine. Wow. So we have career politicians, people that have done this for a long time, all going, what the hell is happening right now? Now, do I think we should all be living in absolute fear? I'm not sure, but you all have local representatives, you have your senators, they've all got phone lines that you can call. Raise hell if this is not the system you want to live in. We did this for years before where everyone was just so fried that every day there was a new thing going on. And I don't think people want to live in this world right now. We don't have much of a choice. But either way, let's end it with Trudeau. This is the moment he announced the $100 billion retaliatory tariffs. He's approaching the podium. This happened on Saturday.
I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you. Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. We don't want to be here. We didn't ask for this. But we will not back down in standing up both for Canadians and for the incredible, successful relationship and partnership between Canada and the United States.
Oh, oh boy, this is not good. I mean, so here we are, people complaining, oh, we gave Zelensky $100 billion, right? And what did the new tax plan by Trump will add $4.5 trillion to the debt. 4.5 trillion is 45,000 billion, right? That's a lot more than 100 billion. Did I do the math right? So that, and it's not like we're going to be getting money back. We're not all getting refunds out there. Those are tax cuts for the wealthy. Those are tax cuts for, mainly people that are making $500,000 to $1 million or more. So that's where we're at right now. $880 billion of Medicare funding about to go away. And it's going to raise the price of your insurance if you're not on Medicaid, because there's going to be a lot of uninsured people. It's a very delicate system. And again, I'm not saying all this to put fear into people. I'll inevitably get comments from folks saying, Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. Why'd you talk about this so much? But to answer a simple question that was asked, hey, Dave, look into it more. Well, I hope I showed you the math right now behind looking into it. I showed you Republican governors, former ambassadors to Russia, former ambassadors to the United Nations. I showed you all of these different people that all essentially said the same thing, which is, this is not pretty. This is not good for us or for all of the allies that we've spent years building, to our brothers and sisters that have fought and died for our country to defend from dictatorships, now to be really looking like we're siding with one. Not a good look. And to the folks that listen in other countries, Western Europe, Canada, Mexico, trust me when I say the U.S., with all of its growing pains, is coming to terms with what side of this story it wants to be on. My guess is, and people can vote with their follow, they can do whatever the hell they want, as we cover simple things like entertainment news and pop culture, we're going to have to continue to cover this, because this is going to affect you at home with your grocery prices. This is going to affect you at work. This is just going to be something we're going to continue talking about. I'm going to try to do it in a way that is sanitizing it from all of the fear mongering and just giving you the news. So again, more to come. This afternoon, we got a wild interview with a friend of mine who was a Bachelor producer and talked about the toxic culture of being a producer on The Bachelor, which included doing cocaine with contestants. That's a wild story. You're going to want to stick around for that. Plus all of your Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni content, which again, when I just to reiterate, right? The morning podcast and the afternoon podcast has an eclectic mix of content. But when I make a YouTube video in the middle of the day, that's, straight to the point what we're going to talk about. So if you don't enjoy the politics, I mean, God bless you for being able to live in that kind of world. We don't have to. But you'll get non-political content coming when we go straight into the Baldoni and Lively stuff coming next. All right. Have a good morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you. We'll talk to you in a little bit. I'm Dave Neal. This is The Rush.